Hello and welcome back to the Olares project brought to you by Tenem Unscripted. This is the first experiment, my head-to-head race. 3 different agents, 1 model. And I laid out the design in the previous video. And today, what I want to cover is the fact that I showed you the files in the last video. I'm actually going to create the GitHub repo that we're going to connect code server to. So I brought the files in to the project folder on the Olares One connected code server, which is the integrated development environment, to that just for a demonstration so that you could see exactly what the file structure is that we're working with. In this particular episode, I'm actually creating a project instance in GitLab, its own separate repository for this particular experiment. So what we're going to do is we're going to walk through here and we're going to go projects. Actually, no, we're not going to do that. Come on, guys. What do I want to do? I want to do a new project and I want to do a blank project. And it's going to be private, or I should say probably internal, mainly because that just makes it easier. And this is going to be engineering-factory AI. And I'm doing this because this is actually a repository that I was working on GitHub. Now I'm bringing it in for the purposes of running this experiment with these 3 different agents, 1 model, and we're going to basically see how this works, So, okay. Oh, yeah, I need to do that too. Map it to my name and create. And now I've got this whole engineering AI factory thing. And what I want to do is I want to, where is my files? Where is add, folks, this is sometimes the craziest thing. So I want to upload a file. And I'm going to come over here and I'm going to drag this in. Directories cannot be uploaded. Please upload single files instead. What? Oh my gosh. Oh, I swear. Yeah, I don't want to be uploading directories. Or I should say, I don't want to be uploading single files at a time. So this was a wrinkle that I was not expecting. And of course, because this is Tim Unscripted, this leads me to the point where I got to figure this stuff out. And I got to figure out how it is that I can make this work. New directory? No, I don't want a new directory. This is falling under the heading of, this is not easy, folks. Not easy at all. So if it makes me upload a file, oh, I swear. Do I get, here's an experiment for you folks. I'm actually going to select a ton of files and see if I get to upload those. And of course, it only brought across the 1 file. This is an experiment, and this was not what I was expecting. So I've already got a rough start out of the gate trying to configure this repository, which makes me go, okay, so let's delete this. Let me think through how it is that I might import all of this. And in the interest of time, I'm going to do a little bit of research on Perplexity, see what Perplexity recommends, and show you potentially how I can import the entire directory into GitLab to avoid the pain of uploading one file at a time. So I'm going to put you on pause. I'll be back with you. And once I have an answer, you guys will be the first to know. All right, and I'm back, and I did my research, and you can see that there was some good things for me to check, to say the least, and subsequently set things up. Had to adjust administrative permissions inside GitLab in order to enable importing a project. By the way, I switched out of my named user account into my admin account on the GitLab instance because it is hosted on Olares. I'm always cautious because these are risky things. If you don't know where you're operating, then you can create challenges for yourself. So I advise that, think through what you're doing before you actually do it, because an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Another way to put it is measure twice, cut once. So what we're about to do is we're about to do the actual zip file import. And so I've already set this up. You saw, at the front of the video, the three different options for either creating a project from scratch, creating via template, and of course doing an import. So now we got the file selected, got the name. Let's see what this does. All right, you need to upload the GitLab project export file in GZ. Huh, okay, well, here's the other thing. So let's go back and we'll do this. And oh my goodness, personal access token. That was not what I was expecting. So I'm going to go back here real quick. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take and do the GZ export from GitHub to be able to take and import it to GitLab, because clearly a zip file is not going to be there. So it's probably, I think the extension is .tar.gz. You can do your own homework to figure all this stuff out. Suffice it to say, I need to put the video on pause once more to pull down the right repo, blah. So I'll be back with you in a few minutes. All right, so that break was a lot longer than what I had expected. And come to find out, had to do some command line interface work because first of all, I am not nearly as familiar with any of these tools as actual software developers are. So I give myself a great deal of grace and credit, even with Perplexity kind of driving how solutions get built. There was just a ton of things where I felt like I was on a hunt looking for the right answer. Suffices to say, what you're seeing now is actually hours later. And this is the actual repo that I intend to use in GitLab that I've intentionally set up under my AI builders group, by the way. So I've set up my lab a little bit differently. I'm still logged in as admin, which is helpful because I kind of needed it to set some of this up. GitLab was extremely helpful in that it gave me a set of step-by-step instructions when I was struggling with this. So this is something that if you're doing something similar, and more specifically, you're doing it on Olares, GitLab, along with probably a couple of other AI-enabled tools, will help you get over the hump. That being said, the amount of time I spent, it wasn't worth recording all the ins and outs of this whole thing, because at the beginning and the end, you would have seen my frustration. And I think more importantly, it would have just been one of those situations where I was already hangry because I was getting close to lunchtime. And, that just doesn't show up well on video. Suffices to say, when the person recording the video is hangry and losing their, collective presence of mind because they're just not getting anywhere. While it may be funny and it may create a meme-worthy moment, the flip side is that I'm the one who has to live with whatever the perception damage is that I create for myself. So that being said, this is more than anything set from the original GitLab, or I should say the original GitHub repo, identically. Now, I was noticing when I was going through the README here, I've got my mermaid diagram isn't rendering the way it should, but then again, my GitLab thing is really just a very basic setup. It's not designed for a lot of the detailed additional stuff that I had moving from one platform to the other. But it's got everything that was in the original lab, I think, minus the commits. The commit sequence, I should say, because it's showing up as me doing the initial commit. So it foundationally is exactly where it needs to be for the agents to be able to run against it. Again, because this is an experiment, I'm doing all of this setup with the idea that I'm going to be able to run an agent, through all of that design that you saw in the other video, and then roll back, not even commit, because what I want to do is I want to be able to compare and contrast some of the work that the agents have done while they're working in this exact repo. So this repo becomes basically a foundational start, and I roll back everything after I do the videos and do some review and whatnot. And then the next agent takes over, and then I roll back, and then the next agent takes over, and I roll back. I think you can see where I'm going with this. So, by design, this is really not meant to be, a public facing production ready repo. It's meant to be a test bed to see how agents perform on coding and review and updates and things of that nature. So this is, really an unconstrained environment for them. The only constraint that I have is I've got a role called robot dev that is a developer. So the agent becomes robot dev. They do all the agent things under that user ID. That way I know who's doing the work. I should say what's doing the work. And you can see that as well as far as, when we go in and we look at things. And I can also tell you that the intent is to, if the agents do make commits on their own, unprompted, to the repo from code server, we're going to be able to identify that via the username, just like my commits here, under tim.dickey or tim-dickey. So, or is it me? Yeah, it's me. So you can clearly see what's going on here. It's a safeguard, folks. That's really what it boils down to. And of course, it's always evidence, which is, the other piece of this, so that you know what to look for when you're running your own experiments in a similar fashion. So on that note, it's up, it's there. Got the other wiring that I need to do in the background, to notionally make all of this work, specifically getting the agents pointed in the right direction. Now, the flip side, I've got no guarantees that any of this is actually going to come together the way I envision. And the reason for that is simply this. Every one of these instances runs in its own Docker container. So this is running, code server is running its own Docker container. GitLab is running in its own Docker container. I'm really kind of stretching the boundary of the art of the possible with all of this. Granted, they do have API endpoints, which is really what I'm going to be leaning heavily on to go, okay, oh, by the way, the code server API endpoint is this. Can you reach that? And I'll have the API endpoints open internally on Olares. That none of these are externally facing, and that's by design. And my my network segmentation on all of my home lab hardware is like crazy segmented. I've got fiber to the house. I've actually got a 5G hotspot that I run the home lab on. I don't want rogue activity happening on my actual network. This is how kind of really IT nerdy I am. It's literal segmentation. It's not even logical segmentation. Two separate networks doing two different things for two different purposes. My family's on one effectively, and the bots are on the other. So that's me. Doesn't need to be you, but this is the way that I design and build things. So with that being said, I think from the standpoint of, okay, this is the target that we're going to use as the validation point, we're good to go. And the next video more than likely is going to lean more heavily on putting the rest of those designed elements together to make the race actually work. So stay tuned for that. Set up the repo, got code server going this episode, made some commits, and as you can see, there's, I've got evidence of that. And it appears that we're going into, finishing up the design connections the way that they're laid out. And that should be even more interesting given the hours delay between when I started this whole thing and when it finally wrapped up with me recording this segment. Again, this is the Olares Project, Experiment 1, brought to you by Tim Unscripted.